Hello Stratters, it's CreepEvee, and we are back doing something quite different than what we normally do. I just wanted to do a quick video and try this out. I think it could be interesting. I wanted to go over some of the biggest news in the world of Magic the Gathering for you guys. I don't know how regularly this would be. I wouldn't say that this will be like a once a week thing because there might be slow news weeks, but probably just plan on if we have a good bit of news come out at the same time, we might cover a few things. And we definitely do have some big things going on this week. So we'll go over them really quick, and then you guys can let me know what you think. I'm pretty excited about some of this news. So let's start with the new Planeswalker rules. So there was some confusion on how these work, but overall it's pretty simple. So planeswalkers are getting an errata, which means all of them will now function this way, not just the new ones. If you're looking at the new Jace, which will be coming out in Ixalan, he now has legendary next to his type. So planeswalkers will now all be treated as legendary cards, just like you might have Thalia Heretic Cathar. She's a legendary, so they will be treated like that. The Planeswalker rule is getting an errata. That is the main difference here. So the reason why all Planeswalkers are going to be considered legendary is because the Planeswalker rule is essentially gone. The Planeswalker rule used to say that if you have a Jace out and you play another Jace, then you have to choose one. It doesn't matter. You could have Architect of Thought, but if you played Castaway here, you would have to swap them out. Well, not swap them out, but you'd have to pick one to keep. Whereas now that is essentially gone, and we're just going with the normal legendary rule, where if I play a second Jace's Cunning Castaway, now I would have to choose one of those. But I can play as many other types of Jace Planeswalkers as I want. So I could have every single Jace ever printed on the board at the same time, as long as I don't have two copies of the same one. So just like you might have Thalia Heretic Cathar, you play the new one, or no, the old one actually, Thraben, some the two different ones. So you would you could play those, and just like normal, even though they're clearly the same person and they have the same card, they have the same name in their card name. They are different cards, even though they're legendary, so they can be on the board at the same time. So just think about planeswalkers in the same way. So that makes for some interesting things. The first thing is, well, let's just look at Jace's abilities since we have him here and he is spoiled now. So +1, whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card, then discard this card. Create a -2 is create a 2/2 blue illusion creature token with when this creature becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it. So normal illusion rules. And a -5 to create 2 tokens that are copies of Jace, Cunning Castaway, except they are not legendary. So even though there are more Jace's Cunning Castaways out, they're not legendary, therefore they don't trigger the legendary rule, so this original Jace, as far as I am to understand, will stay out. And you can have as many of those little tokens out as you want. This makes for an interesting thing because, well, Doubling Season is a card. So Jace is going to enter with 6 loyalty counters because of Doubling Season. We can then do -5, create 2 tokens. We'll actually get 4 now. So then we have a few options, as long as because they're each coming in with 6, we can just continuously -5 a bunch of them and create an enormous amount of Jaces. We actually can create infinite Jaces here. So then we have a few options. We can make an infinite amount of illusions, or one that I didn't think about, but my friend pointed out, if you have a creature out on the board, you can make infinite Jaces and infinite +1 abilities so that you can essentially draw as many cards as you want to and then discard a card. So he pointed out that you could have Lab Maniac out, swing with Lab Maniac, draw your entire deck, and win with Lab Maniac. You wouldn't even have to. Oh yeah, it is deal damage, not just attack. But so clearly, some cool things that you can do there. This is going to be a weird card, and I think we're going to see a lot of weird things happen with it. I think it's an interesting card in general, and it's not bad. I mean, even if you're playing standard and you don't have doubling season and everything, it's not a bad card for sure. So, interesting card to look out for. I think this one is probably going to be pretty highly sought after. But who knows? We might get even better stuff. I do think it's interesting that we're seeing illusions again. If I remember correctly, it's been a little while since we really saw them. So another aspect of the fact that they're legendary is cards like Captain Sisay. If I pull up here, she taps to search for a legend or legendary card, reveal that card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So she can now search for planeswalkers, which makes her a little bit better. Obviously, she's been an incredibly strong commander by herself, searching out some of the biggest heavy hitters in the game. But now the fact that she can search out planeswalkers makes her a little bit tougher. And now I think that the extremely hard to deal with Atraxa planeswalker deck. Now you can throw Captain Sisay in it, and it's just getting pretty nasty indeed. So this card got a little bit of hype after that rule change announced. You can see right around here is when the hype happened, and so we went from hovering around 26 for the from the vault print all the way up to 60, which is a pretty steep increase. Like, let's actually see how much time that is. That's a less than a week jump to 60. So the hype behind that card was pretty huge. We also saw jumps in all of her printings. She was also printed in Invasion. So the Invasion print was 19, also jumped up to 60. Now the Invasion print has gone down a lot faster than the From the Vaults. So I expect the card to level out probably around this point of probably around like 35. I'd say is probably where I'd expect it to hover around, but I definitely could be wrong on that. Either way, the card is definitely going to be more than it was a few days ago. I mean, there's a lot of hype behind it, but there's also a lot of truth behind it. This card is definitely improved thanks to these rule changes. So the hype could die off. If you have them and you're not using them, now might be a good time to sell them, especially if you have the From the Vaults print. You can still get pretty good amount out of it. Definitely more than you paid for them if you bought them a week ago. So you can make a decent profit if you got them. You still can. If you're watching this video, there's still 56 for the From the Vaults. So pretty good profit that you can make there, or you might want to hold on to them if you like playing Planeswalker decks like myself. I do love Super Friends decks, and never thought that I would be playing Captain Sisay in them, but here we are. So interesting rule change. I'm not completely sure how I feel about it yet, but I definitely think it'll lead to some interesting things. So please, down in the comments, let me know what you plan on doing with this rule change. I was thinking that, and I saw a few other people thinking the same thing, that Gideon Tribal could be pretty huge now. The weakness behind the emblem from the newer Gideon that said that you can't lose the game while you have Gideon out is you could only have one Gideon out at a time, but now Gideon's been printed 500 times, so you could have quite a few out to keep you a lot safer from losing the game. So pretty interesting what you could do with that. A lot of people like playing Gideon Tribal already. Might make it a little bit better. So definitely something to think about. You could do that in, well, I guess you're going to lose one of your really good Gideon prints in Standard pretty soon, but you'll still definitely have it in Modern. So that could be fun. I'd like to see some cool builds out of that. But obviously, I haven't had time to think of every combo that you could do with it, obviously. I was thinking having both Tamiyaos out would be pretty devastating. I'm interested to see what new planeswalkers we get, seeing as we're going to see Vraska again. She would probably be a pretty interesting one to try to get multiple ones out because the other Vraska is already really strong. So who knows what we might see. This could definitely be interesting. So like I said, let me know what combos you guys are thinking of. And then the second piece of news that we have, well, I guess the Sisay Spike would be the second piece, so we'll get to three. We have some new restricted and unrestricted announcements for Vintage. Now, I do not play Vintage, partly because I don't have money. And secondly, just I haven't gotten around to it. I have played a little bit online on free-to-play platforms, and it's an interesting format. Like I could see myself playing in it if it wasn't, $1 million to play it. But we do have some interesting changes here. Like I said, I don't know a ton about the metagame, but I know a little bit just from picking it up by proxy, if nothing else. So let's just quickly go over the changes. Thorn of Amethyst is now restricted. Monastery Mentor is now restricted, and Yawgmoth Bargain is unrestricted. So if you don't play Vintage, in Vintage, instead of getting real bannings, most of the time you just get restrictions, which means that you can only play one copy of the card. The Power 9 and whatnot is set up the same way. So Thorn in the Amethyst, obviously to control machine shop decks or cars, whatever you want to call them. Colorless decks that want to play a lot of artifact creatures. They have a lot of ways to pay mana cheaper than a lot of color-based decks do. So they play Thorn of the Amethyst as well as Sphere of Resistance, I believe is the other one that they play, to make your spells cost a lot more. Very annoying to deal with, and it's definitely one of the more dominant decks in the format. They give all of their reasonings down at the bottom, but I'll just kind of quickly go over them. Monastery Mentor, because Mentor decks are really dominant in the format. It's just an excellent card. There's a reason why it's banned in other formats. And in a format where you have even more cantrips that can be abused, he definitely gains value there. Yawgmoth Bargain, they explained that they feel like, well, they said that there's other, like, where was it? They explained that there's other draw abilities now, like Grizzlebrand and Paradoxical Outcome. So they feel like they can unrestrict Yawgmoth Bargain. I guess their idea there is that there'll be, more competition for Yawgmoth Bargain. So I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know how I feel about the idea of we have more draw, so let's unrestrict other draw. Pretty interesting. They did explain that one of the reasons why they're okay with it is because it, I think what they were saying was that it can hurt Storm. I'm not entirely sure how, but they were saying that machine shops or cars, like I said, whatever you want to call them, were a good check to Storm, so they want to make sure that Storm doesn't get out of hand now that they're weakening cars. But this will start September the 1st, so tomorrow, if you're watching this video on Thursday, hopefully. This is interesting. Like I said, I don't know a ton about Vintage, but I do like to keep up with all the bannings, and I don't know if some of you guys might play Vintage. And also, they said that the next banned and restricted list announcement is going to come out October the 17th. The reason why they let Vintage come out earlier is because there is a Vintage event coming up that same weekend, I believe. So they wanted to make sure that it doesn't interfere with that. And also, if you play on Moto, that's already in effect. So that is our news there. And then the last bit of news that I have is the talk of a buyout for Prismatic Omens. Prismatic Omens were hovering around, let's see, what were they before? Around 13 to $14, getting up to 15, 16, 17, and then bam, 38. The card has gotten a little bit more hype now that people are considering, what do you call it? Primeval Titan, Breach, Balkut, whatever you want to call it. That deck to be the best deck in Modern. I'm still kind of iffy on whether that's true, but the deck obviously helps them out a ton. And so easy to play enchantment that makes that deck even more devastating than it already is. Obviously has a desire for it, so we saw that little bit of a price increase, but obviously people talking about it in Modern doesn't cause that big of a price jump. It's pretty clear that somebody went in and started buying them up. Buyouts are kind of annoying, but they happen. So jumped up to almost $40 there. It's now dropping off. It's around 30 right now. So I do expect this to drop back down. The biggest problem with buyouts is people freaking out over them, not so much the inventory. The inventory is a problem, but the freak out is more of an issue. So we are seeing kind of a leveling out of that. But if you want to make some money and you don't need your Prismatic Omens, right now might be a good time to sell them off. But now might be a tough time to buy them. There is a lot of hype behind them, and with this buyout, people are wanting to make money more than sell them, and so you might be getting a pretty bad price whenever they might come down pretty soon. So something to consider. Like I said, I expect this to level out, but definitely probably going to be higher than it was a couple weeks ago, so probably closer to 25. So not a huge price increase, but something to consider. It does make that deck a little bit more expensive, and it's already pretty expensive, so those are the breaks. Unfortunately, that's how everything works, and the card only has one print, so pretty rough. But overall, pretty exciting week in Magic, if I do say so myself, for better or for worse. Maybe you like the rule changes, maybe you're mad about the buyouts, or maybe you think that these rule changes are awesome and you're glad that you're going to be able to sell your Sisseys off for more money. Don't know. A lot of things for you guys to tell me about in the comments. Tell me what you think about this rule change. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What are your thoughts on what you can do with it? How do you feel about these vintage bannings if you are interested in vintage? What do you think about the fact that there's going to be another ban announcement later on in October? Excited? Unexcited? What do you guys think should come off in any format that you guys play? I think that's the biggest stuff. So don't really know how to close this out because this is a very different type of video than we've made so far, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. So like I said, there isn't a whole lot to talk about every week, so this might be on a as available basis. So we'll see how it goes. Let me know if you guys want to see more of these. Otherwise, this has been CreepEvee signing out.